It's 2006, and the FIFA World Cup is underway in Germany. During the course of the event, more than 3 million people made their way into stadiums to watch the matches. And while most people just saw passionate fans, one person saw a target audience. That person was Natalia Vashko. She had been a program director for the Russian television station THT, and she saw a large group of people who were trying to hang on to their youth. These kidults would do things like engage with new technology and adopt trends started by teenagers in order to remain young. And she had an idea for a TV channel that would uniquely appeal to this group, a channel featuring adult animation. She pitched the idea to Rafael Akapov, the CEO of the media holding company Prof Media, and he bought in. Not only did he believe in the concept and appoint Natalia as the head of the project, he already had a television station ready to go. In February, Prof Media purchased the Moscow television station 2x2 or 2x2 for $30 million. While the channel was historically significant, it was the first commercial television channel in the USSR when it launched in 1989, its relevance had long since faded. The channel had low ratings and was effectively just a shopping and music video network that occasionally showed movies. The deal was viewed as a fairly massive overpay. However, according to NewsMuzz, by acquiring the channel, Prof Media had also secured, quote, the last independent broadcast frequency in Moscow, end quote. While it would take work and a fair bit of cash, many people thought that it would still be a worthwhile investment. But that doesn't explain why they ultimately decided to turn it into a channel focused on cartoons. As for why Rafael Akapov felt so strongly about Natalia's idea, he thought that a channel focused on animation would be more effective at drawing in his target audience of 11 to 34-year-olds. And the low production costs also didn't hurt. He explained the decision in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter and stated, quote, we didn't have any fixed ideas for 2x2 when we bought it. Content and branding was a wide open book. But working with the data from the market research company TNS Gallup and the media sales agency Video International, we soon hit on animation as a key niche ripe for exploitation. The TNS Gallup research showed that most of the 11 to 34 audience hops between channels. Animation catches the eye and draws in viewers. Cartoons are relatively cheap content, fast and easy to buy and dub, especially in Russia, where the major channels are not always eager to accept offers from the Hollywood majors for these animation parts of their packages, end quote. As you probably noticed, their target demographic includes more than just adults. While adult animation would be their primary focus, they were aware that they wouldn't be the only people watching. There were also content laws to consider. Cartoons that contained obscenities would have these sections muted, and graphic violence would be obstructed. If you wanted to see the uncensored versions, you'd have to tune in late at night. Natalia Vashko explained their position in an interview with Ogonyok magazine. Quote, we wanted to conduct a fairly aggressive campaign aimed at preventing children from watching television. I think TV is entertainment for adults, and tired adults at that. We have a pretty tough position. We are an animation channel, but not for children, although we will have children's cartoons on air. After all, the TV is in the family, and I can't stop the children from going near it, end quote. During the day, the channel would feature popular shows like Futurama, The Jetsons, and Johnny Bravo, but at night, they would air uncensored animation on a programming block with a familiar name, Adult Swim. While Rafael announced that Natalia would be in charge of 2x2, Prof Media didn't reveal their plans for the channel until October. During a small event for reporters and those within the media industry, they announced their plans for 2x2, a 24-hour animation-based channel for adults, and this revamped version of 2x2 was going to officially launch on April 1st, 2007. While there would be 2 hours of programming specifically allocated to Russian cartoons, the vast majority of the channel's content would be licensed from overseas, and Prof Media was currently in the middle of negotiating licenses for content. According to Konstantin Vorontsov, Prof Media's public relations director, they were working on acquiring, quote, modern American animation, both short and serial, cult series like The Simpsons, Futurama, South Park, Japanese animation, end quote. They even considered airing hentai in the evenings, but ran into trouble trying to obtain licenses. But that wasn't because they weren't willing to invest in the project. The channel was planning to spend between 10 and 15 million during the first year, and most of that was being spent on licensing content. They also followed up the announcement of the channel's makeover with another large acquisition. At the end of October, they spent $23 million on their Rambler TV channel. The purpose of this acquisition was to acquire the channel's St. Petersburg broadcast frequency, which would allow them to broadcast 2x2 in both Moscow and St. Petersburg. After a short test run in March, 2x2 officially launched in April 2007. The channel hit the ground running, drawing in their target demographic and pulling in decent ratings. However, after a few months, things began to stall and they weren't picking back up. And at the end of the year, Prof Media decided to streamline their operations. They combined the management of their television channels, as well as various legal, financial, and administrative tasks, in order to form a new entity, Prof Media Business Solutions. This restructuring changed the way that the channels were managed and the roles of existing managers. Because the responsibilities of her position were going to be reduced, Natalia Vashko decided to leave the company in February of 2008 and was replaced by Roman Sarkisov. While the channel didn't maintain the ratings it pulled in at launch, it was in no danger of being shut down, and they didn't appear to have any major issues in their first year. But right before the channel officially launched, and Natalia was still running the show, she predicted that the channel would see resistance. Due to the controversial nature of some of their programming, she expected that they would receive pushback from two groups in particular, the government and the Russian Orthodox Church. And right after she departed, her predictions began to come true. On March 4, 2008, 2X2 received a warning from the Federal Service for Supervision of Mass Communications. In their statement, they said that two shows that they were broadcasting, The Adventures of Jeffrey and Happy Tree Friends, quote, promote the cult of violence and cruelty, harm the health, moral, and spiritual development of children, and infringe on public morality, which violates Article 4 of the Law of the Russian Federation on Mass Media, as well as the conditions stipulated by the license, end quote. Despite disagreeing with the assessment, they immediately decided to pull both shows from their lineup. While they had received complaints in the past, including a notice from a member of a government committee, this warning was much more serious. If 2X2 received another warning from the agency this year, they could have their broadcasting license revoked. While removing these two shows seemed to satisfy the Russian government, there was another group that wasn't satisfied with the channel just receiving a warning: the church. But instead of the Russian Orthodox Church, like Natalia Vashko predicted, the next wave of opposition would come from Protestants. On March 11th, the leaders of the four largest Protestant churches in Russia wrote a joint letter to Yuri Chaika, the prosecutor general. In their letter, they claimed that 2X2 was corrupting the youth, stating, quote, on this TV channel, through animated films, there is a 24-hour mass pumping of the consciousness of minors with the ideology of depravity and other vices, ruthlessness and cruelty, propaganda of homosexuality, religious hatred, and intolerance, end quote. They demanded that several shows be banned and wanted 2X2's broadcasting license to be revoked. While the complete ban list apparently had over a dozen shows listed, the ones mentioned by name were Icky Towson, Beavis and Butthead, Angry Kid, and South Park. On the 13th, Muslim leaders from the Nizhny Novgorod region called on all Russian followers of Islam to support the efforts started by the Protestant Church and file complaints to the Federal Service for Supervision of Mass Communications. While these complaints grabbed headlines, things slowed down until the summer, when a church decided to escalate the situation. On September 4th, leaders from the Pentecostal Russian United Union of Christians of Evangelical Faith filed a complaint to the Prosecutor General about 2X2. While they also signed the joint letter in March, this complaint reiterated their demand that 2X2's broadcasting license be revoked. They also said that South Park should be banned. According to Gazeta, they asked the channel staff to, quote, refuse to continue working on the television megaphone of Satanism and universal abomination, end quote, and asked the channel managers to, quote, voluntarily immigrate in full force to some uninhabited island and indulge in their vile pleasures there, end quote. While commentators didn't think that these complaints from religious groups would meaningfully impact the channel, with some just calling it free PR, the channel's managers were questioning their motives. According to Roman Sarkisov, quote, someone probably just needs the TV's channel broadcast frequency, but for some reason they chose believers as the instrument in the fight. It is strange that the media are covering some complaint from Pentecostals about our TV channel. All this is not serious, and their accusations are groundless. It is obvious that they are someone's mouthpiece and are carrying out someone's orders, end quote. The reason why they were so suspicious of the Pentecostals goes back to the early 2000s. From 2001 to 2007, a show titled Good News aired on TV3. It was hosted and founded by Rick Renner, an American preacher who also served on the board of the Pentecostal Church. So, for 7 years, there was Pentecostal programming airing every single day, but that changed in 2008. Raphael Akapov explained the situation in an interview with Izvestia, quote, on November 7, 2007, after the purchase of TV3 by Prop Media, the contract with Good News was terminated, and since January 2008, the Pentecostal Church has launched a massive campaign against 2X2. The real goal of this campaign is to achieve the return of Protestant preachers to the airwaves. And during this campaign, members of the Pentecostal Church, including its chairman Sergei Ryakovsky, have repeatedly approached us privately for a behind-the-scenes settlement of the situation, end quote. While that complaint probably didn't worry them too much, what happened next was much more serious. On September 8th, the Moscow Prosecutor General's office submitted a notice to the Federal Service for Supervision of Communications and Mass Media to take action against 2X2. According to the notice, the Prosecutor General's office had experts study 118 episodes from 12 different cartoons, and they came to the conclusion that, quote, the content of the cartoons does not comply with the requirements of the legislation on the protection of the moral and mental development of children, on the protection of their health, end quote. South Park, in particular, was labeled as extremist. The previously mentioned experts were members of Moscow's Forensic Expertise Department, and they concluded that South Park, quote, demeans the honor and dignity of Christians and Muslims, insults the feelings of believers regardless of faith, and may provoke interethnic conflict, not excluding extremist actions, and may contribute to the incitement of interreligious strife, end quote. This news spread quickly across the country. While some groups, like the Russian Orthodox Church, celebrated, 2X2 had plenty of supporters, not just from their viewers, but journalists, actors, writers, radio and TV hosts, and more. But the threat to the continued existence of the channel was real. They had already received a warning from the communications agency this year, and if the court agreed that they were broadcasting extremist content, that could result in their second warning, which, if you recall, could result in the termination of their license. If that wasn't bad enough, their license was set to expire on October 17th, and 2X2 received an official letter to remind them that the Federal Competition Commission for Television and Radio Broadcasting, or FCC, had to consider the opinions of consumers when determining whether or not to grant them an extension. And, so far, it looked like the only consumers that they were hearing from were those who wanted the channel taken down. But that didn't last. On September 13th, fans of the channel gathered in Moscow's Novopakinsky Square in order to voice their support for 2X2 and condemn the ban on South Park. 2x2 then started to organize. On September 15th, they announced that they would be collecting signatures from viewers who wanted to support the channel in both Moscow and St. Petersburg, and people showed up, allowing the channel to collect 1,192 signatures within 24 hours. They started working with volunteers to set up signature collection stations, and the number of signatures continued to rise. While this was going on, they also decided to fight back in the courts. On the 19th, they filed a lawsuit against the Prosecutor General's office in the Arbitration Court of Moscow to challenge the legality of the warning that they were issued. And even if they had resisted it so far, they decided to pull all controversial programming until the case was resolved. And fans not only continued to sign petitions, but they continued to protest. Starting on the 20th, a series of fan-led protests took place across Moscow and St. Petersburg, the largest of which took place on September 22nd, when 1,500 of them returned to Novopukinsky Square. The signature collection campaign came to an end on September 23rd, the day before the FCC was going to decide whether or not to extend their license, and they managed to collect around 35,000 signatures. On September 24th, the FCC recommended that the channel's license be extended. They also confirmed the network's suspicions about the nature of the complaints. In a statement to Kommersant, one of the representatives said, quote, "A significant portion of the letters to the prosecutor's office and the Federal Service for Supervision of Mass Communications were organized from the outside. In addition, the commission members had doubts about the work of the experts involved, some of whom had previously been seen speaking out against the channel." End quote. Things were made official on October 17th when 2x2's license was extended by 5 years. And while this was a big win, they weren't out of the woods just yet. They still had to contend with the extremism warnings issued by the Prosecutor General's office. Preliminary hearings for 2x2's appeal began on November 11th, but the issue wouldn't be resolved for several months. But the channel's opponents didn't give up either. They submitted a new complaint to the government about a completely different show, Great Teacher Onizuka. The expert opinion on Great Teacher Onizuka was that it promoted violence, cruelty, and sexual perversion. But that case appears to have been dismissed in February 2009. Then, on June 2nd, 2009, the courts revoked the Prosecutor General's warning and dropped all charges against 2x2. The Prosecutor General's office appealed the ruling, but the court's decision was upheld on August 28th. So, after a long, drawn-out battle, fans of 2x2 could finally relax. Adult animation was here to stay.